What can we expect now in specifics in terms of addressing the current NPL situation? The Finance Secretary in his conversation with me yesterday alluded to the fact that we could perhaps see fire sales by banks to try and clean up their balance sheets. What is it that can happen? Specific sectors like steel, where we've now seen an import duty imposition, but that's not really going to solve or alleviate the pain that the sector is seeing. Is there the possibility of a new financial restructuring plan as far as discoms are concerned? What can we see in terms of specifics?
That's a very fair question, Shereen, and the answer to that is that we're taking a divide and conquer approach. We think to deal with NPAs, which are a big complex problem and span many sectors of the economy, we have to use a multitude of approaches to really do this divide and conquer. Let me tell you what they are. First and foremost, what we have with the Reserve Bank of India now is a very, I think, thorough approach towards really understanding where the NPAs are, what is the extent of the NPAs, and really ensuring that the banks don't necessarily evergreen them or hide them, number one.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just on the question of NPAs and the manner in which NPAs are being looked at this point in time, there is a sense that perhaps the picture is worse than what is being projected at this point in time. How would you respond to that?
I don't think that's the case. I think with what the RBI has asked banks to do, the full picture as far as NPAs are concerned is now in front of everybody, all stakeholders. So I think that has been a very important aspect of dealing with these NPAs, is the recognition and visibility of those. So that's number one. Number two, there are a whole host of things that have to happen on a case-by-case basis. And in this case-by-case type of handling, we have tried to, with the Joint Lenders Forum, the strategic debt restructuring, the cell that's been created within the banking department in the Ministry of Finance, we've tried to ensure that all the stakeholders are around the table, whether it's the banks, whether it is the equity holders, whether it is various government agencies that are involved in all of this. We want all the stakeholders around the table so we understand where the issues are and we can solve them in a collective, collaborative way. It's a negotiated process. It's a workout process. They're going to have to be haircuts as far as equity is concerned. They're going to have to be haircuts when it comes down to creditors. So that's the second thing. We're dealing with them on a case-by-case basis.
So banks will need to take the haircuts.
That again is something we have to look at case by case. We have to look at the underlying asset. We have to understand the project and say, what, given the cash flow that is coming from the project, what is the level of debt that can viably be handled? And we have to look at that. Those numbers have to be done. That's the workout that needs to happen with all the stakeholders. And if government needs to do what it needs to do with respect to policy action, that also we are prepared to do. The power of the Indian state is going to be involved in this to solve these issues.
By when do we expect this?
That is, Shereen, that has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. We have to look at each individual situation and it has to be worked out, as I said, through negotiated settlement. New equity also has to come to the table and we'll have to see where the new equity comes from, whether it is from private equity funds, whether it is from the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund that we are working on. New equity will also have to be brought to the table on these case-by-case situations. So that is item number two. Item number three, there are certain sectors like steel, for example, or the power sector where we are dealing with discom and fuel linkage issues and so on, where case by case is not enough because you require systemic intervention, you require policy action, and there we are seized with the matter. We are looking at what can be done from a policy perspective. As far as the steel industry is concerned, we've already raised import duty twice now, 2.5% most recently. As far as discoms are concerned, we are looking at what we can do with respect to the discoms. Of course, as far as fuel linkages are concerned, the coal auctions have already been undertaken. So that's what we're trying to do with some of these industry level issues, is to try and resolve these industry level issues as quickly as we can. We've taken action in roads, we've taken action in sugar, and we are doing that as well. Longer term, and that's the fourth aspect of this, longer term, what we're trying to do is to bring in place a world-class bankruptcy code. There's a Vishwanathan committee report that's due to come in relatively soon. We'd like to be able to table legislation in the winter session, and I know you're smiling when you talk about Parliament, but we are eternal optimists.
I don't even want to talk about Parliament because it'll end up taking time for no reason.
But I want you to know that again, when it comes to NPAs, we have a very comprehensive approach and we are looking at it in this divide and conquer. Then there's one final point. You have to recognize that in other parts of the world, when they've dealt with NPAs, there have been specific vehicles that have been created, whether it is a resolution trust corp, whether it is a TARP-like facility, whether it's an ARC. People have created specific vehicles to deal with stressed assets. We are open to that. We are exploring that with the National Investment Fund, and it was explicitly set up to have that flexibility. We do have an opportunity to create funds, either general purpose funds or specific funds that are related to specific industries, for example in power, where, as I was saying earlier, that new equity can come to the table.
And this will be done via the NIIF.
And the NIIF can be the sponsor of some of these funds. The new equity can come to the table, and we can see what is possible through the negotiated settlement process, because the bankruptcy code, putting in place, the courts and everything else is going to take us time. So we need to be able to make sure we have the mechanisms in place to resolve these NPAs as quickly as possible. All that being said, Shereen, all that being said about NPAs, the reality is the amount of capital that we provided our banks right now and the kind of deposits that they're getting right now gives them ample liquidity and ample credit worthiness to be able to undertake infrastructure financing if the right projects come along. So I think overall we are in good shape. We are working the NPA problem. It's a divide and conquer approach.
Just a quick word as far as the NIIF is concerned, and the NIIF being used to address the NPA problem, because the NIIF itself is likely to be operational only, if I'm given to understand, by about October or perhaps by the end of this calendar year. So when do we actually move towards that?
No, we are trying to move it forward as quickly as possible. You're right, it's towards the end of the year that it will get operational. But one aspect of getting it operational is to actually build the project pipeline as well. So we are already looking at which projects will really be able to become viable or take off if there is new equity or new capital that's on the table. That review process has already begun. It's been underway for a while. So we know what the pipeline looks like. So when we in fact go to investors and say, please invest, we can say to them that there is a ready pipeline of projects that are commercially viable, where the returns are quite attractive, where NIIF can come in and make a big difference.
Let me ask you now, because I didn't want to talk about Parliament, but let me ask you about what is likely to happen as far as a possible special session is concerned. Has the political decision been taken within the BJP, within the NDA, to try and push the opposition to reconvene, to get a special session to push the GST bill through?
The people of India, Shereen, have sent us to Parliament to do the utmost on their behalf, to do whatever we can to ensure that India's economic growth, that the job creation happens. So obviously with that responsibility on our shoulders, we are exploring all possible alternatives.
Special session, and obviously we don't see the GST bill go through till the winter session. Is the 1st of April 2016 now a dead deadline?
It's a very difficult deadline to meet if we don't get GST passed relatively soon. Not so much because of the administrative and technology and systems aspects of it. Those are well in hand. We've been working hard on those, and we have those I think very much within our ability to accomplish. We've also been working with the states and we've been working to establish the revenue neutral rates and so on. So all of that is moving along very smoothly. It's the legislative calendar that's difficult to deal with because of all of
and the states will have to pass it as well.
So the legislative calendar, just so I can be explicit about that, obviously once the 122nd constitutional amendment is passed, we have to get 50% of the states also to pass it after that. Then the GST bill itself has to come to Parliament, because all the the sort of details about the rates and how they'll be worked out and so on is going to be in the GST bill. That GST bill then has to be passed by each state assembly as well. It's that legislative calendar that is quite challenging.
The Monetary Policy Committee, that now will have to be taken to Parliament in the winter session as well, along perhaps with the PDMA bill. The composition, a lot of controversy around it. Has a decision been taken or not?
I think all the controversy...
The Finance Minister says the decision hasn't been taken. The Governor says we have a broad consensus. We have an agreement with North Block. Where do things stand?
I think all the controversy is created in the media. There's no controversy between RBI or North Block for that matter. No, we are purposefully working towards, I think, a very good consensus on that. We are very close to that. We are very close to finalizing it, as the Governor said, as the Finance Secretary said. So, as soon as we are ready to make that public, we will.
Since we're talking about the monetary policy and we're talking about rates as well, the Finance Minister has gone on record, and there's no secret about it, to say that the timing is favourable for a rate cut. The buzz has been picking up on the possibility of an out-of-policy rate cut. Of course, the next policy is on the 29th of September. Do you believe that the time is right for an out-of-policy rate cut?
You're asking the wrong question. That question, you should ask Dr. Rajan that question.
Oh, but what is the North Block view?
Well, I think overall our sense is that we are in a very favorable environment for lower rates. The timing and the extent of that obviously is an RBI decision.
Jayant Sinha, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. We wish you the very best of luck with the unfinished reform agenda. Congratulations once again on Indradhanush today, and thank you very much for speaking to us here on CNBC TV 18. With that, it's time for us to wrap up this special edition of CNBC TV 18 show. Thanks very much for watching.